What's up, guys? Today I am interviewing an old friend of mine who just came up to my mind, Tanner Gardner. Haven't talked to him in years. He was a wrestler from Kansas City. A couple years behind me, he ended up going to Stanford University, where he was an All-American. And since then, he has become an athletic administrator. And I thought with the dropping of the Old Dominion program and a lot of the difficulties that are going to be going on in athletic departments due to the cancellation of March Madness, and who knows, possibly, I don't think so, but possibly football season, I wanted to get his take. I want to get an opinion of athletic administrators to see what they're thinking about this type of situation. What are the best practices that wrestling programs can have? What should fans expect? How can they make a difference? That kind of thing, as opposed to just saying, these athletic administrators, they don't care about wrestling, X, Y, and Z. I can't stand that mentality. My mentality is always, let's figure out what we can do about this. Let's change something, and let's move forward. So we are going to have Mr. Tanner Gardner on. He is an AD at Rice University. So here he is. All right, guys, I'm here with Tanner Gardner. Tanner, what's going on?
Ben, just living the new dream, working from home.
Yeah. So I did an intro to the show right before this on my camera. I don't think I've talked to you face to face. I mean, probably since you were at Stanford. I know we emailed a couple times, but it's been a really long time, huh?
Yeah, I guess that's 12 years. I can't believe feels like recently with the wrestling community, but yeah, it's been 12 years, I think, outside of a couple emails.
Yeah, wow. So just to catch everyone up on who you are, because the wrestling community, they're very short-sighted. They don't remember us old guys. Tanner and I we cross paths all the time. You wrestled in Kansas in high school,
Yep.
East Kansas Wrestling Club, right? And then that's all correct so far?
Yeah, that's right, with a couple of your college teammates.
Yeah, with a bunch of my college teammates, and we saw each other at junior duels, junior nationals, all that type of stuff. And I was actually thinking a bunch of your East Kansas teammates live out where you went to college still by Stanford. Ian Bork's still out there.
Yep.
Do you ever
Kevin Clem, one of our coaches, is actually out there coaching out there now. Scott Pauley, another guy who you might remember. Yeah, we got a good Kansas Missouri connection in Palo Alto still.
And how about Sean Bunch? He's out there, right?
Is he really? I didn't know that. He probably has moved there since I left. But
yeah, I think he's in San Jose.
Okay, does he train there for Ultimate Fighting?
Yeah. You guys, the East Kansas Wrestling Club, that era, your era specifically, put out so many really good guys who are still around the wrestling world. It's fantastic.
Yeah, Joe Johnson, I think, isn't he? He's a coach at maybe Air Force right now?
Air Force, yep. He's at Air Force. He's doing a really good job. Austin DeVue is actually the head coach at Colorado School of the Mines. They're having the best season they've ever had. Well, they had the best season they ever had this year, so he's doing great. So, yeah, it's really cool. I mean, obviously, those are my friends also. It's really cool watching them move their way through.
Yeah, it's those were good years. I guess that was like the early 2000s, almost 20 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah, don't date yourself. Okay, so then you went to Stanford University. You had an awesome career, and then after that, so that's where I want to pick up. After that, I guess you chose to go into athletic administration. Is there a master's program? Is that something you completed while you were at Stanford, or did you go somewhere else for that?
Yeah, I had a bit of a circuitous route to my role at Rice University, where I work right now. But, I had a great experience as a student-athlete wrestler at Stanford. When I got out of college, went into management consulting for a company called the Boston Consulting Group. Thought I wanted to make a bunch of money and give it all back to Stanford Wrestling because they needed money at that time. I think they still need money, too, but they're better funded now. But realized that my passion was in working with student athletes, and so after going and get my MBA, doing some more consulting, actually through a wrestler, got this opportunity at Rice. My athletic director at Stanford was a guy named Bob Bowlesby. So Bob, commissioner of the Big 12 now, but very involved in the wrestling community. I consider him a mentor and a friend, and he hooked me up with my now boss, Joe Carlgard, and I guess August of 2014, so almost 6 years ago, I joined Rice University in the athletic department.
Wow, yeah. So do you give any money back to Stanford Wrestling since they needed it so bad?
I do give money back still. Nice. On an athletic administrator's salary, it's not quite as much as a corporate CEO, but I do what I can.
Yeah, absolutely. They actually had a pretty good season. They have two really good. Do you pay attention a lot still, or?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
my assistant coach at that time was Jason Borelli, who's the head
Yep.
coach, and then Ray Blake, who's their associate head coach, was my roommate in college. So
Oh,
I stay in
really?
touch. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
know
yeah.
that. Wow.
So Ray's a good friend. Yeah, I followed him closely. I mean, I couldn't have been more pleased. Two freshmen, one undefeated, one with only one loss. I think both had a shot to win the national title,
Yeah.
which we've only had one national champion at Stanford. And when I was there, we were happy to All-American at that time. So the
Yeah.
program's really come a long way.
Yeah, I was really interested to see how Real Wood specifically would do because he had a great year. He had the really close match with Luke Pletcher, who's obviously ranked number 1. But
Yep.
then besides that, he hadn't really wrestled anyone all that highly ranked. So it was like, okay, maybe he's the best guy in the weight, but maybe he's like an 8 through 12 guy. We don't really know because we haven't seen him against anyone else. So that would have been nice to see, the Nationals play. Obviously, for many reasons, to see the Nationals play out.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about Real Woods. A couple years ago, I was at Stanford for my 10-year reunion, and it happened to be a recruiting weekend for those guys as well. And so after they had done their formal workouts, a couple of the guys were rolling around, and you know how it goes when you're in a wrestling room. Someone asks you to wrestle, you go. And I held my own in my time, and even now I got the old man strength, and so usually can keep it up. But I got out there against one of the current guys on the team. And, he took it easy on me a little bit. He understood. I was a little bit older. And then Real was there, too. And, man, that kid whooped my butt. And I will
Really?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I mean, he's double-legging me all over the place, and I just couldn't believe it. I mean, it was I was like, walked off the mat, and I'm like, man, this kid's going to be a national champion. I mean, I'm old and washed up, but, usually I can defend a leg attack at least. And, he just crushed me. So I'm going to be careful about getting on the mat again with recruits.
Yeah, that's funny. Wow. Yeah, I don't know if I would have admitted that. I don't know if I would have admitted that one to anyone. I always try to go. If I go back to college, I'll get them while they're young. I'll try to beat them up when they're freshmen or something. Then as they get older, I don't want to wrestle with you anymore. One of those things.
Well, when I got my MBA at Harvard, and I actually was a volunteer.
You did?
Yeah. So I was a volunteer assistant for the wrestling team under Jay Weiss when I was there.
What?
Yeah. So I worked out with those guys almost every day.
Wow.
There was a guy named Stephen. Well, J.P. O'Connor was on the team at that point. And then there's a guy named Stephen Keith on the team who was a lightweight, and he ended up becoming an All-American my second year. So that was fun. So wrestling runs deep in my DNA.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I didn't realize you went. So you got a Harvard MBA.
I did, yeah.
That's kind of a big deal, huh?
Well, wrestling helped me get there. I mean, I think, I wouldn't have gone to Stanford if it wasn't for wrestling, and I wouldn't have gone to Harvard if it wasn't for Stanford. So definitely helped me.
Damn. I just read this book, not to bore you with my life. I read this book called The Greatest Trade Ever Made, I believe. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not. No. What is it about?
John Paulson, and he bet on the housing crisis. Bet against it, obviously. He was a Harvard MBA, and they talked about a lot of his connections. So
yeah, I think he gave $100 million to Harvard or something.
I believe he made $13 billion on the trade.
That's amazing. Well, I guess it was a rounding error then for his $100 million, but thankful to him for his generosity nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get into it. I kind of prepped you for what I want to talk about. So I can't stand, this is my own personal take, I can't stand ODU dropped last week, but wrestling people just want to say, oh, those athletic administrators, they're evil. They just wanted to axe wrestling, whatever. I find that very difficult to be true. Maybe every once in a while, there's a chance that it is. But I wanted to get an actual athletic administrator's opinion. And so I was kind of thinking through it yesterday. Who could I talk to that I know is really intelligent, is going to give a great opinion, obviously cares about wrestling, so there's no bias there. And so I that was when I reached out to you. So if you don't mind, can we talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, so as an athletic administrator, you have to probably have no biases besides, I would this is my guess. I'm not an athletic administrator.
Sure.
What each program brings in and puts out, right? Their profitability. Number one. Number two, I'm sure Title IX impacts a little bit the men's and women's sports. And then number three, I would guess how much of a pain in the butt that sport is to deal with. I would think, if I'm an athletic administrator, those are probably the three things that I'm considering when I'm thinking, okay, some tough times are coming. I got to get rid of somebody. Who am I going to get rid of? That's probably what I'm considering.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a fair assessment of a framework that an athletic director might consider. I mean, I think as athletic administrators, by and large, in my experience, we don't want to wrong anyone. We don't have any kind of vendetta. Maybe some make decisions based off personal opinions, but my experience is that, it's more in the broader interest of an athletic program. And I think, a lot of people, with me being at Rice, to go from the other side, say, well, when are you guys going to add wrestling?
Yeah.
And, often my response is, well, once we can fund our current student athletes at the right level, then, we would consider adding a sport, right? Because I think, regardless of the portfolio of sports that you offer, Ben, you want to make sure that you're providing a good student athlete experience for each one of those student athletes that are there. And so, if you're not providing, for example, the best that you can because you're not funded well enough yet, well, then, rather than offer a couple things on a mediocre basis, it can be a hard decision to say, I'd rather do really well at the things that I do versus do just okay at a few things. And, I think any wrestler would agree with that comment.
Yeah, absolutely. So keep going.
Ahead. No, so I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think, certainly dollars and cents make a difference. And, not that we're trying to make a king's ransom in college athletics, because, there are a few athletic programs that actually are self-supporting.
Yeah.
So, it's not about trying to make more money. It's about trying to, reduce the deficit or reduce, the support that you require otherwise. And, sometimes that requires tough decisions.
Yeah, so I mean, let's talk about that a little bit, because I don't think a lot of people recognize that fact. I think most people see big time college football and basketball as these huge money makers, and all these athletic departments are just raking in the cash. When that's not the reality situation. I don't remember what the number is, but I mean, from what I've heard, it's not a majority of athletic departments which are profitable. Is that correct or false?
Yeah, I think, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's somewhere around 20 athletic departments are actually self-supporting, or, making more than they, spend without university support. So, we're talking 20 out of 351 Division I institutions.
Damn. Wow. So, okay, so when you're saying not without university support, so then, obviously if there is support coming from the university, what is encouraging those people, right, not non-athletic administrators, just school administrators, to give more or less support?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a myriad of factors that they consider. I mean, obviously the success of your programs matter the most at some schools.
Yeah.
But, and I mean the competitive success, but, particularly at a school like Rice, we're a high academic institution. And so I think our administration is very focused on, what do our student athletes bring to our campus community? So, if we have student athletes that are great campus citizens, that are really involved in campus, that are really adding to the community of Rice, then that's gonna compel a university administrator or board of trustee member to want to support athletics. I think to the extent that our student athletes are getting good grades and they're top performers in the classroom, that's going to compel our university administrators to contribute more to athletics. So I think it's a combination of those two things. But I think you got to control the things that you can control in an athletic department, and you got to do the table stakes well if you want support. And those table stakes are being good university citizens, being good at academics. Mm-hmm. So I think that's table stakes.
Yeah. Okay. And so, so when you're saying 20 out of 350, we're talking, like 95% of athletic departments are somehow reliant on their general university to give them funding. So when we talk about, let's just talk about those 350, and I don't know if you have stats on this, but it's my understanding that a lot of universities, not just the athletic department, but the university in general, are running at deficits as well. Is that right or wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't opine on that. I haven't studied it enough.
Okay.
But I mean, I will say that the industry of higher education is challenged right now. I mean, I think people are questioning the value of college. They're questioning whether they should take on debt. And so I think it's having an adverse impact on enrollments, particularly at smaller schools. And the economic model of most schools is tuition driven, and so the number of students that go is determines your economics. And so as less students come, then it becomes harder to have discretionary funds to spend elsewhere. And particularly when universities are in hard financial situations, as athletic departments, while we are certainly a core part of the university, we have to realize that we are not the purpose of a university, right? So like
a lot of people think that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and I think that's what professional sports is. And I'll say I'm the biggest advocate for college athletics ever. It changed my life. But when you're in an objective position like I am, you have to realize that sometimes these funding decisions are, my boss says it this way when we're having tough budget discussions. He says, well, the university's making a decision. Do I fund a PhD physics professor who might have a cure for a global pandemic, or do I, I don't know, let my wrestling team go to, the Virginia Duels, right? And when you frame trade-offs like that, it's like, well, if I put my biases aside, like that's a hard decision to make.
Yeah. No, it's you make a great point in that. Okay, so obviously you and I were really depressed that the NCAA championships got canceled. Awful. But probably even more impactful. Well, the rest of the championship actually makes money. And this one was actually made a football team, so it actually might have made more money than usual. But even with that, the NCAA basketball tournament makes way more money. What
Correct.
kind of impact is not having that one event, right? The NCAA basketball championships. What kind of impact will that have on most athletic departments? And if you even want to break it down, say small, medium, and large, something like that. Obviously because the bigger you are, the less impact it would probably have, I'm guessing.
Correct.
What kind of impact will that have on athletic departments all over the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'd stop short of saying it's catastrophic, but it is significant. So, the NCAA generates somewhere between $900 million and $1 billion, I think, on their NCAA basketball tournament every year. And they use that for a number of purposes. But the NCAA distributes $600 million each year to member institutions for, support of grant and aid, for support of the Student Opportunity Fund, and many other categories. But that distribution this year is reduced from 600 million to 230 some million.
Damn.
So we're talking a 62.5% reduction in the amount of funds that an institution gets. And so, don't quote me on this, but I think I read that, per Division I institution, it's an average impact of $900,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right. So just look at the size of operating budgets of various institutions, anywhere from, $10 million for the smallest Division I schools. They're probably not getting $900,000 in NCAA distributions, up to, $200 million. It makes more of a difference to some than others. But, for a school like Rice, who's in the middle, it's significant. We have a, $30 million operating budget. And if we're not taking in $1 million that we had expected, and that, you assume that's guaranteed. The NCAA tournament for basketball has never been canceled, and so
never.
It's truly a black swan event. And so as we're going, kind of figuring out how to navigate these tough times, Ben, my team often stops me when I say, "Well, that would never happen." To which they respond, "Well, no one ever thought they canceled the NCAA tournaments, then, did they?" Yeah,
no, it's true. I mean, it was wild how fast all of it happened too, because I was going to broadcast this year for ESPN, and it was like, okay, on Wednesday they're not going to have any fans, and everyone's like, oh my God, they're not going to have any fans, and then it was literally like Wednesday night, NBA's canceled, Thursday afternoon, NCAA's is canceled, and it was like the dominoes fell so fast, it was almost unfathomable. And yet, to your point, I mean, I guarantee there was not 1%, but not one person that planned for that to happen.
No, nobody. The NCAA has some reserves. They have some, loss of business insurance in these things, but you don't insure fully against something that's never happened before, right? You have partial insurance, and you hope it never happens, and you hope you have enough reserves to cover it, and we are where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I don't know if you can comment on this or not, but Obviously, as we move through this thing, the true answer is no one really has an idea of the long-lasting impact this is going to have. Is it going to last for another week? Is it going to be another month, 2 months? People are getting annoying with how many predictions they're making because they just don't know. This is the first time we've been, to your point, first time we've ever been through this. What are the chances you think this could stretch all the way to football season? Because when people say that to me, I'm like, wow, that's, we're talking now 3, 4, 5 months. And, I think that's where it would get really scary for athletic departments is because NCAA basketball tournament is a really gigantic moneymaker, but their biggest moneymaker is the NCAA football season. And so, when I look at some people saying that, I say, man, I'm having a hard time imagining that. Do you think that's even on the table?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to consider it. Probably 2 weeks ago, I would have told you, no, there's no chance it happens. But, as I follow things, more and more, it just seems like, that's a real possibility and we ought to plan for it. I'd be irresponsible to try to handicap it because I'm not a public health expert, nor do I have all the information. But it's certainly a possibility. And, frankly, I think it'd be catastrophic. I said that the NCAA basketball tournament almost was, but, I think the cancellation of the football season has a potential to, change the way that college athletics operate. I don't know what that means yet. I've thought about it a lot myself, but, you're talking, some of these athletic departments are deriving, high percentages, 70, 80% from the football season. And if it doesn't happen, and, you can't turn to the university for extra support because they're struggling as well. And so, I mean, there's really, where do you turn? And I think that's a legitimate question. Do you try to take out a line of credit to hold yourself over? I mean, there's a lot of things you can consider. But that's why I think, you see a lot of talk. And I know that conference commissioners and athletic directors are talking about, all right, well, if we can't play football starting in, August, September, what are our alternative options? And they're looking for every alternative.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah, I mean, it's, do we play a shortened season of only conference games? Do we play over the fall and the spring? Do we play just in the spring? I mean, I literally think they're looking at, the last option, is not playing, and that's not really an option because, athletic departments can't really function if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I guess, and maybe you can answer this question probably much better, I don't have an answer, is at the NCAA already canceled the spring seasons of everything across the board. So for me, it was like, okay, the NCAA basketball tournament, they have, a weekend and then tournament. The NCAA wrestling tournament, we already got the damn brackets. We already know, everyone's already on this chart. It's like, why couldn't you give people a 1 month notice? Say, hey, we don't really know when this is going to be over, but literally, we have no NCAA spring sports, so we could do it in June or July or, potentially even August if we need to because we don't know when this is going to end. And when it ends, it's not like there's something that's going to – this ends May 30th. There's not going to be something that happens on June 1st, right? There's no spring sports, so there's going to be an off period of time there. I don't know why. I thought the NCAA could have slid and just kind of, don't put a timeline on it. Say, hey, when this is going, when we start going down here, when we're starting on the downslope, let's start making some plans and try to give everyone 3 to 4 weeks notice and then do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that, to be honest, went through my head as well. I mean, generally, I'm an advocate of pushing decision making as close to as you can or delaying instead of canceling. To be fair, I don't have all the information. They're probably acting on better information than I am. So, but generally, I think that would be the preferable option if possible. And as we think about our return to play and, even we have, significant summer camp business at our university, like many universities do. And, a lot of coaches rely on these funds to supplement their salaries. And, that's kind of the next big thing. If those were to get canceled, that has another significant impact, but what I'm advocating for on campus is, hey, let's push a decision as late as we can in a responsible way. So if new information were to become available, that we can then decide to go. Because I think like if you say I'm going to go on a 2-week rolling deadline such that nothing's going to start for 2 weeks from the day that I say, then at least it gives me time to prepare. But, once again, don't have all the information the NCAA had. So, I'd be irresponsible to say they made a bad decision.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I mean, I agree with exactly what you said, that Yeah, that summer stuff, that's going to be a killer. Obviously, we have a huge summer camp system as well, and I know a lot of colleges rely on that type of income. Not only athletic teams, but universities have so many rooms rented over the summer, so it's going to be a huge hit to their budget as well if those don't run.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say most universities at this point are saying they're going to do summer school online. So I hope that I'm trying not to read the tea leaves like that, but I'm hoping for the best, but we're planning for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I guess the last question I have for you, unless you want to talk wrestling or something, which we could do that. That would be a lot of fun. Is if you are now put yourself in the shoes of a wrestling coach. What are the type of things that you are doing right now to keep yourself as valuable as possible? Almost indispensable to an athletic department. What are the things that they can do? And then also as fans, what can fans do? I mean, is it, because I know sending angry letters, angry tweets and letters to administrators probably is not all that helpful.
No, I think that's right. The stick isn't the way to get a wrestling program back. That's for sure. But I mean, I think if I'm a coach, let's go back to what I said about the table stakes. Like, make sure you're doing the table stakes well. Make sure, your student athletes are succeeding in the classroom. Make sure that they're good citizens on campus. They're behaving well. They're involved. I think, if you are a model program, it's much more difficult for someone to look at you and say, we don't need you. I think secondarily, a wrestling coach should, maintain strong relationships with their athletic administration. So every program has a sport administrator. The wrestling coach should make sure that communicate well, tie yourself at the hip to that person and the athletic director to the extent you can, because they are the ones that are going to be making these decisions. And, as a coach too, serve on campus, be visible, be a part of the community as well. So when people have positive thoughts about you, your program, your kids, they're less likely to make decisions that adversely impact you. And so if I'm a wrestling coach, those are the things that I do. Of course, I want to have as successful of a competitive program as I can. But, for me to say you should have a competitive program, I realize that it's easier said than done and how you go about that. If I'm a fan of a wrestling program, I think this, everyone's struggling economically right now, but I think the way a program's supported, or the way that a program's alumni, former student athletes, are supporting the athletic department is also part of the calculus, right? If, a couple of the biggest donors of an athletic department are wrestling alumni, then, an athletic administrator might think twice about cutting that program, because there's a lot of downstream implications should that program be cut. So, I think wrestling fans should, vote with their feet and making sure they're going to matches, but they should also, to the extent they have the means, vote with their pocketbook. I mean, athletic departments are increasingly struggling financially, not even including, the current coronavirus crisis. And so college athletics is going to become an increasingly philanthropically supported model. And to the extent that wrestling fans are supporting the programs that they want financially, then that's going to provide more security to that program in the future.
Yeah. So they actually brought up, I'm sorry, I said last question, but that brought up one question.
No, it's good.
So the debate on RTCs, are you familiar with the RTC system?
I am.
Okay, so the debate is, the college coaches who oppose it say that, well, if you're an athletic administrator, you have this program, wrestling program on campus, who's raising funds which will then go into an RTC, which aren't actually part of the athletic department. Now, it might assist that wrestling team in getting better, but, when times get tough and they see a wrestling program which is actually taking funds away from the general university athletic department fund, then that's going to be really negative. That's kind of their argument. Obviously, the other side of the argument is that it's been hugely beneficial to the success of America. Do you think those people who are saying that, do you think they're on point when they're considering that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not familiar at that level with the RTC program to know, but I mean, I think conceptually there's probably some truth, right? If you believe that, giving to the wrestling program is a zero-sum game, and it's either going to go to the RTC or to the, wrestling program's budget, then I mean, I think the more money that's redirected elsewhere hurts a little bit. And like you said, it might help the success of the program. And, it's probably harder to negatively impact good programs, but there have been good wrestling programs that have been dropped. And so, I think, finances are really important. And, we're not all about money in college athletics, but finances matter, right? In any organization, finances matter. And the more financially healthy programs, once again, they're safer.
Yeah, of course. Okay, you want to talk any wrestling or anything else?
I mean, what do you got? You finished wrestling. You tried the international level. You had some success, and then you fought a little bit. Are you doing anything anymore?
So my brother Max and I own 5 wrestling academies. Unfortunately, we opened number 4 and number 5 like 2 weeks before this thing started. So that's highly unfortunate, but obviously we'll get them going once this is done. So I'm loving it. Obviously, I've retired for my second time from mixed martial arts last November. I'm pretty sure that's it. I got to get my hip done, which is, that's part of wrestling. That happens to a lot of wrestlers. I figured it would probably happen to me at some point in time. This is sooner than I would have liked to. And then I never thought I would be part of the media, but this is kind of where I've ended up. So, I do the RUDIS podcast on Mondays. I'm on Flow Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And I do a bunch of other stuff too. So it's like, I didn't really ever envision myself being one of the media, but that's kind of one of the places where I've ended up now.
Yeah, you have a good on-screen presence, so you could hold your own. It's funny, you talk about Flow Wrestling. Flow Wrestling came about in our age, right? It was, 2005, 2006 in California, started by a couple guys near Stanford. So, I mean, I remember that was a budding endeavor when we were here. And if we would have had that kind of coverage when we were in college, it would have been pretty cool.
That would have been so awesome. I always complained today, kids today, that the access they have to watching matches. I remember digging for matches and trying to get DVDs and everything of stuff to watch when we were. And now it's just so simple for them to, to watch any type of match. Literally, they can get Russian film or European championships or whatever it is. They can do anything they want. It's so easy. So, okay, let me ask you this. As you were going to be a corporate CEO, who was one of the companies that you, I don't want to say idolized or looked up to or that you liked the most?
Well, I mean, I think every athlete probably thinks that Nike is the coolest company that exists, or maybe Adidas if you're a wrestler. Yeah. But, I'd have loved to have been an executive at that company. I actually, when I was in business school, I spent a summer working there, and really? It's as cool as you might think. It was an incredible experience. I mean, it's like, they're professional. Manchester United practiced on campus when we were there. They have a couple gyms, a soccer field, a sand volleyball court. I'll never forget 10 a.m. on a Thursday. My boss is walking by my desk, and I try to ask her a question, and she tells me she's going to do yoga. So where else do you have something like that happen?
Yeah, that's. Have you read Shoe Dog?
I have. It's one of my favorite books.
It's so good, isn't it? I was just talking to someone about persistence and dealing with adversity, and that was, obviously as a wrestler, you and I probably dealt with it a lot also, but then as a business person, it's like sometimes you always want things to go faster, and so with our academies, it's like everything's been great, but I always want faster. And I read Shoe Dog, and it was like, year 17, they still almost go bankrupt. It's like, that's Nike, though. How are they still almost going bankrupt in year 17?
Yeah, it's like disciplined sprint, and you got to have persistence, right? I mean, I think, well, I to all the younger wrestlers, I mean, the value of perseverance is tremendous, and the perseverance you learn from wrestling is unparalleled. And I attribute a lot of my success in life to what I learned in wrestling. And, like you said, you got to stay after it. Rarely do people succeed immediately. Those are unicorns, but most people aren't unicorns.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last question, since I said last question a few questions ago. Hey, you brought up Black Swan, Nassim Taleb. Have you read, did you read Anti-Fragile yet?
I have not, no.
Oh, I would, highly recommend for your quarantine. And I think this is a very anti-fragile time. I mean, and it's something that you're going to understand it right away, because I feel like it's something that's just inherent in wrestlers. Is you essentially go, there's a test, and whatever the weakest thing is going to get shook out. And so right now with this current situation, we're going to find out what the weakest, whether it's, within a specific industry, whether it is a whole industry, is like, is teleconferencing going to become a significantly more important part of our life moving forward? I think there's a distinct possibility of that.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
So I wrote it down. I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, man, we appreciate your time. Thank you for giving us some really good perspective. And hopefully, maybe I'll see you. How about you come to St. Louis to the NCAA championships next year?
That sounds good. There was a period from 2003 to I think 2013 where I went to every single NCAA championship, and then I joined college athletics, and March is one of my busiest months, so I haven't been back. So St. Louis was my last NCAA championship in which I wrestled, so it only seems appropriate that that's the one that I go back to.
All right, that sounds perfect. We appreciate you, Tanner, and hopefully I'll see you around.
Yeah, Ben, thanks so much for having me on. Love wrestling. Anything I can do to contribute to the community, I'm happy to. Best wishes to you.
All right, thanks a lot, bud. See ya.
Bye.